That's it, yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
For us, it's great quality.
Okay, good.
We are happy you are with us here again with such a long break. Sorry to letting you
So how did
know
you spend the break?
by inviting Venerable Tendar.
Now it's frozen.
Hello,
Okay.
frozen.
What do we do for this?
Frozen.
Yeah, dead.
Hey,
Ah, here you are again.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see how it works.
Yeah, exactly.
When
Maybe
you
we better talk about impermanence today rather than refuge.
well,
Yeah.
on the break, we had Venerable Tendar teaching us about death. Do you remember? Hello,
Yeah. He was talking about death.
and impermanence. Yes.
All right. Okay. So you already know, you already prepared for the interruption of the internet connection and stuff.
And this was
Okay.
two
Cool.
weeks ago. And this was
Did
two
you have
weeks
another
ago
discussion group also?
with Venerable Tendar.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So maybe
Okay.
he already touched a little bit on the topic of refuge.
Sorry. Can you
Did he
repeat?
already touch on the topic of refuge a little bit?
No.
No? Okay. So he told you about death and then he didn't give you a refuge. Okay, cool. Right. Uh, maybe I can first ask the people how many, maybe some of you have already taken refuge. How many of you have taken refuge?
It's just me.
It's just you? Good, wonderful. Great. All right. So let's start by preparing ourselves for the session with some meditation in the beginning, some meditation calming the mind, concentrating the mind, and um, and then also generating a motivation for this session. All right. So first we use our body to come into the present, which we can do actually at any moment, even in our work life, anywhere in the train, at any wherever you are. Yeah? If you want to kind of cut what's going on in your mind, you can just come back to the body and focus on your breathing or feel your body brings you right in the moment. We want to do the same here by meditating a little bit. So the first thing is that we check our body position. And the important thing is to have a stable position with your legs, yeah, that the legs are forming a good basis. Ideally, you put your knees on the ground. If you can't do this, you can also support the legs with cushions for both sides, yeah, to make a stable position. And you also make sure that the legs are comfortable in this position, that it's not painful from the start, or that maybe the blood circulation is blocked in one way or another. So we want a stable position, but we also want a comfortable position. And then the most important thing is that we have the spine straight, that the back is straight. Yeah, so we sit upright in order for the energies in our body to flow freely. This makes it very conducive for our meditation. And so we can imagine that our back is like an arrow, straight like an arrow. And then we check our shoulders, so there's no tension in the shoulders. And you can roll the shoulders a little bit to open up, to make sure that there's no tension there. You can move them a little bit. And then you can place your hands in your lap. So you rest the right one in the left hand and the thumbs are touching. Just naturally. Actually, we'll find out there's a very natural position for the hands. And then we tilt or tuck the head a little bit forward. And we had, if we can, we try to meditate with our eyes half open. So we would look with our eyes along the back of the nose in front of us, just gazing there, half open. And then we check that the whole face is relaxed. There's no tension in the jaws, that we don't have the lips pressed together, but that the lips are resting naturally on each other. And then we check that the teeth are also naturally resting on each other, are not clenched together. Everything relaxed and natural. And we put the tip of the tongue behind the upper row of the teeth. This is stopping us from producing too much saliva, so we don't have to swallow all the time. Just feel your body and see if it's comfortable everywhere and without any tension. And then, having prepared the body in this way, we also want to work with our mind. So first of all, we want to keep the mind in this place. We will try to stop the mind from running around, running wild. So we become aware that we are doing something very special here and that we are coming together here in a very special group. And we are about to do a very special session, talk about special things, things that are really having to do with ourselves, with our emotions, with our well-being, with our life, with our death. And so this is a very conducive group. This is a very good place to be. It's the best place to be for the next hour or so. So we decided we keep the mind here in this room. We don't have to plan the future. We don't have to assess the past. We can be just here. We don't have to run to other places. This is the best place to be. It's very peaceful, very conducive. We decide to keep the mind right here. If it runs away, we're going to bring it back. And then even further, we can concentrate the mind by placing the mind on the breath. Again, a physical sensation that is always with us. We always can turn to the breath to concentrate, to let go of other thoughts. So here also we want to concentrate the mind, we place it on the breath, just allow ourselves to do just that. We give us the freedom to do nothing else but just focus on the breath. If any thoughts are appearing, we let them just naturally fall off. They're impermanent, they're going to die down by themselves if we don't follow them. So we decide to simply stay on the breath and not follow any kind of thoughts or distractions or noises or something. But if we find out during the meditation that we have been distracted, then we don't make a drama out of this, but just naturally and gently bring the mind back to the breath. So let's go of all the thoughts. You can feel like they're falling off us like leaves in the autumn and are carried away by the wind. And we just focus on the breath for some minutes. If the mind gets distracted, we just gently bring it back to the breath. And then within this concentrated and calm mind, we can then generate a motivation for the session. And so we're going to talk about refuge. So first we can ask ourselves, what's our motivation right now? Why did we come to this evening, to this session that is going to be about refuge? What do we expect from it? What will motivate us? Why did we come? Nobody forced us. We are here completely free and out of our own decision. What was our motivation? Where are we right now? And then whatever motivation we found, we can also generate a motivation. We can work with the mind and create a motivation for this session. We could think along the following lines. I want to engage into this session in order to learn more about Buddhism and therefore about my mind, my feelings, my life, my potentials. And I want to learn more about that because I want to improve my life. I want to be able to communicate better, to be more open, loving, generous. I want to be more skillful to deal with all kind of problems or moods that I might have in the mind that are unhappy, that are non-satisfactory, that are suffering. And so I want to engage in this session because I want to be happy and I don't want to suffer. And I want to get better at that. So therefore, in order to understand more about myself and my life, I want to participate in this session with all that I have, with all my intelligence, all my concentration, all my creativity, all my analysis. And I'm going to question things. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to think about them and check them if they make sense or not. And I'm going to engage with all I have in this session because I want to improve my life. And then we can also become aware that we are not living alone, but we are very connected to everybody around us and to actually all of humanity and to all living beings. So we're going to expand our motivation further, and we're going to say we're going to engage into this session in order to learn more about the mind, about the potential of the mind, in order to be more open to others, in order to be more connected to others, to become more loving and compassionate, and in order to have more to give to others, in order to understand others better by understanding ourselves, understand the potential of others by understanding our own potential, and by learning techniques in order to help not only ourselves, but also everybody around us. So with all I have, I'm going to engage into this session in order to be of greatest benefit for everybody around me and actually for all living beings. That's why I'm going to do this session. And so with this motivation, we're going to do this session, which is a spiritual practice, a spiritual act. And so request support by everything that is loving and everything that is wise, everything that is enlightened, to support us in our act. And so that's, in a nutshell, actually what it means to go for refuge. So I'm going to just recite in English the refuge prayer slowly, and you can just listen to it and see what it does to your mind before we then start the session. So we can imagine that the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas are present, and they're very happy with us coming together and discussing Dharma, discussing about our mind. And they want to support us in whatever way they can. And we invite them to support us. We ask them to support us. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merit from giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merit from giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merit from giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Thank you. So we want to talk about refuge. And so like the idea was originally to talk about how to set up a daily practice. And I said to Marius, actually, to set up a daily practice makes only sense if you are already have a certain foundation and why you are doing this kind of practice and so forth. And within a daily practice, you would definitely also meditate on refuge. You know, like this very verse that I was reading out, you would maybe meditate on that to actually generate a state of mind about that, a state of refuge and so forth. So that's why we had the previous two sessions, what we called like essentials of Buddhism. So we were talking about how the mind is not material, how the mind has its own continuity, it is not caused by the body, although it's influenced by the body. There's past and future lives. The different forms that these lives take are based on karma from our actions and so forth. There will definitely be death. But death will be another experience. It will be another moment of mind, and it will be followed by after-death experiences, which will be yet other forms of mind and so forth, and then there will be rebirth. So we talked about all these things. I'm very happy that you had Venerable Tenda there who already talked about death in more detail. We also were talking about how within this mind, which is defined as clear and knowing, just that. Yeah, there's nothing material about it. It's just that it has an appearance of phenomena and understands them in one way or another. I was using this example that while we are very small beings here on this planet, much smaller than the ocean or than the mountains, the ocean doesn't know that it's the ocean, but we know that it's the ocean because we have consciousness. The ocean doesn't have consciousness. And the mountains don't know that they are the mountains because they don't have consciousness. But we know that the mountains are the mountains because we have consciousness. The same for the sun, the moon, Jupiter, the rings of Saturn, the universe, and so forth. So we have this very precious thing, which is non-material, this consciousness. And within that, we have this wish to be happy and not to suffer. And this is absolute foundational statements in order to understand what Buddhism is all about or why the Buddha taught in the first place. So the Buddha is actually taking us in that spiritual aspect, this aspect of having this phenomenon of consciousness that is really cosmic because it has so many past lives, it will have so many future lives, it has actually no beginning and no end, it's way beyond time, way beyond that little frame that we are living in right now as human beings, as Romanians, or my kids as German, or as Europeans, or what have you, or as men or as women and so forth. So we are beings way beyond that. All what we are right now, we are exactly right now. And all of this will change. So we are much more than we are normally perceiving about ourselves. And within that, there is this actual spiritual quality of wanting to be happy and not wanting to suffer. And so the Buddha is talking about exactly that. He's talking about how we want to be happy, and he's asking us, how is it going? How is your life developing? Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you continuously satisfied? Are you having a lasting peace? Are you experiencing a lasting happiness or even lasting bliss? And also, we don't want to suffer. And the Buddha again says, very friendly, not cynical or ironically or anything like that, not hurtful, but very intimate. He's asking us as a friend, how is it going with not suffering? Yeah, how much harmony do you experience and how much disharmony? How much aggression are you experiencing? How often are you disturbed by other people saying something or doing something? How often are you frustrated? How often are you afraid of death? How often are you afraid of sickness? And so forth. Yeah, so how is your life actually unfolding with regard to this very core aspect of your consciousness that you don't want to suffer and you want to be happy? How is it going with that? And so that's in a nutshell, you could say this is the spirituality of Buddhism. Yeah. So maybe in other religions, spirituality means that you meet God, or you have a vision of God, or you have mystic experiences, and so that's not at the center of Buddhism at all. I mean, of course, there is great yogis who actually have encountered the Buddha Manjushri or the Buddha of the future Maitreya, or have visions of past lamas and so forth, and have texts revealed and so forth. So there's all kind of, let's say, miraculous or mystical stuff going on for sure. But the very core spirituality is about taking ourselves, taking sentient beings in general, and us as sentient beings serious in our wish to be happy and peaceful, and in our wish not to suffer. So when the Buddha is asking us, how is it going with your life? Do you experience this lasting satisfaction and peace? Then that's a very intimate question, and we would have to take this to our own room and check this out, and have to be very honest with ourselves. There's no spirituality possible without honesty towards yourself. And you have to be really open to see what's going on in your life, and dig your own experiences, and really kind of check out where you are and how your communication with others is going. Are you afraid of others? Are you closing down with others, or are you open with others? Are you afraid to be hurt by others? How's your communication going? Are you clear? Have you a lot of miscommunications? Are you loving towards others? Are you generous with them? And so forth. To really check this out. How is my life going? Very personal question, obviously. And that's why it is spiritual, because it is questions about your mind, about your spirit. And so this is where the Buddha is talking to us. He's saying, like, from my point of view, you actually experience forms of happiness which are very short-lived. And you're experiencing more or less things which you could call a kick. Yeah? You have that drink, that conversation, that movie, and so forth. You get a kick, and this kind of wears off, either because it's over and you need another drink, or because while you're consuming it, let's say a movie, you're getting distracted, you get bored, you want something else. So it doesn't actually do the trick. You look for another kick while being in the kick. So it's amazing. It's far from a situation of actually being satisfied, deeply satisfied. The Buddha is pointing out that on the one hand, we are looking for having no problems and sufferings. And on the other hand, we are looking not just for some kind of happy experience, but we're looking actually for satisfaction, for fulfillment, for lasting happiness. So that means we want to be happy such that we never have enough of happiness. Yeah? So it's not that, let's say, we would have a whole week of only joy and peace and bliss, and everything is just wonderful for a whole week. And then some suffering would kick in. You would not say, oh, that's okay. It's okay that I'm sick now. It's okay that I'm lonely now. It's okay that I'm depressed because I just had a whole week of happiness. That's okay. It's not okay. We want to be happy always. We are actually looking, therefore, for a lasting happiness. So the only thing that we have at our hands right now is jumping from one kick to the next kick, to the next kick, to the next kick. So the Buddha is saying there is very different forms of happiness. Happiness that are actually not having to do with outer situations or with objects or with other people behaving towards you in a certain way, but have to do with a basic state of mind, a basic outlook on the world, on yourself, on life, a basic way of dealing with life, in which you can stay open all the time, loving all the time, happy, free all the time, whatever happens outside. So even if somebody is aggressive towards you, or even if a relationship breaks apart because the other person runs off or something, would no longer mean that therefore you get sad or depressed or disturbed. You could just stay continuously happy and peaceful, open, creative, have all your good qualities, and even increase your good qualities. So here the Buddha is, are we connected? I'm getting a message here that the connection is gone.
We hear you. We have sound, but there is no video.
I don't know, people.
I will call you again. It reconnected.
Okay, great. So we have here a very dissatisfactory, suffering, problematic situation. It's not a lasting, nice, peaceful thing here. So anyway, the spirituality of Buddhism is talking about these states of our mind. They're really indeed spirituality in the sense of it is completely interested in the spirit, in our consciousness, in our mind. And maybe spirit is a good word because it can happen to us Westerners when we hear the word mind that we're more thinking about things like memory or analytical capacities or thinking or mathematics or something. But actually, this word that we translate as mind here is supposed to encompass all our creativity, all our dreams, all our emotions, all our good emotions, and like love and compassion, all our nasty emotions like anger, jealousy, and so forth. So all of this is part of the spirit, part of our mind. So keep this in mind that the mind is actually encompassing all these kind of phenomena. So if you want to do it a little bit more technical, you can always come back to this definition of mind. Mind is that which is clear and knowing, has an appearance and interacts with it by way of a mental reaction. So this is even true for anger. Anger is also clear and knowing in that sense. Anger also has an object, an appearance, and is interacting with it. Yeah, in a wish to destroy it, for example, get rid of it. But this is a mental reaction. Yeah, also, anger does not have any shape or any color or any taste. Yeah, anger is also clear knowing, is consciousness, is spirit. It is a sick spirit, but it is a spirit. Same with attachment or jealousy and so forth. Although jealousy has an object, an appearance, has clear, and is interacting with it in a jealous way, yeah? Not wishing the other person to have that good condition and wishing to have the condition yourself instead, and so forth. So this is also a sick spirit, but it is spirit. It is also a sick mind, but it is mind. It's clear and knowing. So that's quite helpful actually to think about these things, to explore our emotions from that point of view. So also our emotions and also our afflictions, as this is called, are not physical. They're also mental. They're also without color and shape and so forth. So then here I used already this word that the spirit is sick or the mind is sick and so forth. And so to some extent, this is, from a certain point of view, the message of the Buddha. The Buddha is saying, for the time being, in our present state, we are spiritually sick. Because of that, it will be impossible for us to have a lasting, fulfilling happiness and peace. And we will encounter problems and suffering all the time. There will be misunderstandings all the time. We will be disturbed all the time. We will feel lonely and we will feel like that we are missing out or feel lost and so forth all the time because the spirit is sick. So the Buddha is saying the spirit can be healed. And this is where the spirit in a healed form, in a healthy form, will simply be in that state where the happiness is coming naturally from inside, regardless what the substances are that we are using, what we're eating or drinking, what we possess or don't possess, and so forth. If the spirit is healed, the spirit is naturally in this healthy state, in a state of fulfilling happiness and peace. And from the other point of view, if the spirit is healed, then the spirit is completely free from any kind of problems, any kind of sufferings, any kind of dissatisfaction. So this is where the word refuge comes in. Yeah. So you go for refuge in general. You would look for refuge or for protection, or you could even say for help. Yeah. You look for help when you say I go for refuge. I'm looking for a refuge. And actually, what you're saying, I'm looking for help. You're looking for help when you need help. You're looking for protection when you're threatened. Yeah. You're looking for a refuge when you think that here something needs to be improved or you need to be protected or you need support in your present situation. So obviously going for refuge is talking about all of this in the spiritual realm. So we're talking for help in the spiritual realm. Like when we go for refuge to the Buddha, obviously we are not saying I need somebody to help me to, I don't know, to repair my washing machine. So I need some help. So I go for help to the Buddha to help me repair the washing machine. So we're not talking about that. We talk about needing help with our spiritual realm. And again, the spiritual realm is not something completely mystical somewhere up there in the sky, but it is something very down to earth. It is, I need help with my wish to be happy and not to suffer. So that what this indicates is, if you want to go for refuge in a spiritual way, if you want to call for help or support in a spiritual way, then you first must come to a state where you understand that you need help in the spiritual realm. If you think everything is just fine with your mind and your spirit is completely healthy, and the problems that you experience is because the other people are misbehaving, and there's nothing wrong with you, and there's nothing wrong in your mind. There's nothing wrong with your jealousy, there's nothing wrong with your anger, there's nothing wrong with your attachment, and so forth. There's nothing wrong with you aging and dying. There's nothing wrong with you accumulating karma and then taking rebirth on the base of that. There's nothing wrong with you having to go through puberty and being under the power of your parents and then being under the power of your employers. Everything's just fine. Any kind of problem that appears is because of others. Then you're in no state where you feel like you need support, spiritual support. So you need spiritual support if you have already understood quite a bit about what's going on in the mind. And when you have already become somebody who is living his or her life on the basis of understanding that life is about happiness, and from another point of view is about getting rid of the problems and getting rid of sufferings. So you can do this either with regard to yourself, but if you want to take a much bigger spiritual outlook or proportion, then actually life is about saving everybody from suffering and leading everybody to happiness, lasting happiness, fulfilling peace and happiness and bliss. So if you have come to that plane, that this is actually the meaning of life, then you already kind of have entered towards spirituality. And on the basis of this, that you already make it your project to achieve that lasting, fulfilling happiness that you're actually looking for, and to actually be able to get rid of your problems and sufferings, then on that basis, you look for help and support from somebody that can be of support with this kind of project. So a normal doctor can be of support with regard to some health problem. And maybe the state can be of support with regard to security in society, or maybe with some kind of laws that are regulating so that people don't end up in poverty. I don't know what, something else. So there can be all kinds of support. But with regard to this, this spiritual quest of really looking for a lasting fulfillment, you will have to go for a support or a refuge that is very specific. So why would you go to a doctor for support with a health problem? Because you would expect that this doctor is qualified for that. He has knowledge about this kind of health problems. He has knowledge about how to cure this and so forth. So when we say that from a spiritual point of view, our spirit has certain kind of drawbacks, that we can actually say that the spirit is sick. Yeah, the soul is sick, the spirit is sick, the mind is sick, whatever you want to call that. Then you would have to look for somebody who is a support, because he's skilled. He's very knowledgeable. He's an expert with regard to mind, a master of the mind, a master of the spirit. So that's what the section or the teachings on refuge are really about. They are talking about, on the one hand, how we need support, and on the other hand, how we are having in the Buddha and his teaching and the community of advanced practitioners of this teaching have a very qualified support for our spiritual quest of liberation from all suffering and the attainment of a stable fulfillment and stable bliss. So this kind of state of being free of all problems would be called nirvana. And if you're even getting free from all kind of spiritual limitations in your mind, and you completely purify the mind, And that state would be the state of omniscience, of Buddhahood. So these are states that we would be looking for, having gained a certain understanding about the mind and how the mind works and the potentials of the mind, that there's a potential for nirvana, there is a potential for Buddhahood, that are really kind of very far-reaching projects, and that definitely need some support. We will not be able to do this just by ourselves. We will have to receive some guidance. We will have to receive some teachings, in the sense of that we need to receive input. Yeah, the Buddha has, from my experience at least, I don't know how it's for you, but from my point of view, the Buddha has a lot of new thoughts to offer, to approach things in very different ways, in a new way, to think about a certain situation in a very different way. And these are, I have to say, these are ways that I would never have found out by myself. So I simply need this kind of teaching, this input from this master, by way of the present day lamas and geshes that are actually teaching to us today. I need this input in order to think differently, to start to think about a different path, a different way to use my life, a different way to deal with my emotions, deal with my mind, a different way to look for happiness, and a different way to deal with my sufferings, and so forth. Yeah? So that's part of the support that the Buddha is giving, that he's actually kind of describing things. He's already this step that the Buddha is taking us serious, and is actually talking to us about this inner wish to be happy and not to suffer. That's already actually quite helpful, because maybe everybody would agree that we all want to be happy and we don't want to have problems. But then if you check on a daily basis how much we are actually investigating our life, how is it going with that? Then I would hold that we all, most people, all people, are actually living their lives rather by I want to be happy, therefore I do this and this. What I'm actually looking for is a career. What I'm actually looking for is a wonderful relationship. What I'm actually looking for is that kind of holiday, and that kind of landscape, in that kind of hotel, or what have you. Yeah, some idea. So we are no longer checking, are we actually happy, or are we suffering? But we have decided that it's about that. It's about money. It's about items. It's about cars, houses, holidays, maybe sports. It's about our body and so forth. So the Buddha is taking it more serious than we take ourselves. The Buddha is talking to us on the very level where all our actions are coming from the level of wanting to be happy, not to suffer. So we might not even be on this level. We have to first discover that actually this is what is governing our life. So already to come to that level where things matter, if I talk about myself, I needed the input of the Buddha. The Buddha was actually saying to me, like, look, it's not about anything particular. It is about being happy and not suffering. And for example, His Holiness points this out. His Holiness says, like, if you understand this level, then you can understand that indeed, in all the diversity of beings, of different human beings, for example, all the 7 billion people that live on the planet, there's so much diversity. But actually, where it really counts, they're the same, on this level of wanting to be happy and not to suffer. So that very level, we are not perceiving about ourselves so much, and we're also not perceiving it so much, or at all, actually, with regard to others. So the Buddha is already there on this level, is talking to us from that level. So even to get there, I need this support from Buddha's teaching, then the respective teachers that I met to point this out, to speak what the Buddha said 2,500 years ago, to speak it to me, to say it to me. So already there is obviously this support in order for me to make sense of my life, to make sense of my my wishes, and to wake up a little bit to my reality, first of all. So the point is that the Buddha is giving me this kind of intellectual, first intellectual input, and then maybe also very skilled description of my situation and also of my potential, how I could live my life differently, out of his own experience. Yeah, so he's not only qualified by way of what he's saying, but what he's saying itself is qualified as being something that he himself tried, and it worked. And so the Buddha is actually, in many ways, like me, like you, like all beings, in that he's somebody who has a consciousness. And that is somebody who doesn't want to suffer, who wants to be happy. Now, he might have achieved that, but that doesn't take away that he's exactly like us. He's a living being. He wants to be happy. He doesn't want to suffer, and he has achieved that. Fine. We haven't achieved that. But not only is he the same with us from that point of view, that he's conscious, that he's a living being and so forth, but he has attained his present state of freedom, of, I called this before, getting out of the spiritual sickness and becoming spiritually healthy. He has attained this by practicing. And what this wants to say is that he was before like us. He was also spiritually sick. So of course, the Buddha, if you, the more you study about the Buddha and the Buddha's path and what he's describing there and all the realizations that he has and all the capacities that he has, the more you generate a faith in the Buddha and like an awe for the Buddha, if you like, being very inspired by the Buddha and almost like glad and happy about the Buddha that somebody could have all these kind of qualities. Yeah? So that's definitely things that we bring to mind when we go for refuge. We bring to mind the qualities of the Buddha. But it always needs to be understood that actually the Buddha was like us, and that the Buddha has practiced, and by practicing has transformed himself, has healed his spirit, and is now in his state of fulfillment, where all the blockages or limitations of his mind have been completely dispelled, so that his mind has become limitless, which appears from our point of view as being very special and outstanding, but actually it is simply the healthy state of mind. He has healed himself. So out of that he was sick like us, and maybe even worse, you know, to be very clear, the Buddha in his past lives did horrible things. And when he was in our state, he was also killing people. He was also maybe in some lives he was maybe a psychopath or did all kinds of stuff. Maybe a terrorist and stuff. Whatever. You know, maybe he was a slaughterer. He was killing a lot of animals. In many lives like this, just like us. We might not be acting as a slaughter in this life. Might not be a terrorist or kill people and so on. But we can be sure that in many other lives we did. So right now we're actually in a rather virtuous and calm and peaceful state in this life. But anyway, my point is that the Buddha was in our state and worse. And he purified his mind completely by practicing that, what he is now teaching to us. So he is a complete expert in that path that he is teaching to us. He is teaching from experience. So he has purified himself, he has healed himself, and is teaching to us now how to get healed in the mind. That makes him an outstanding support, an outstanding friend and help, companion with regard to our own project, that we want to be happy and we don't want to suffer. That we want to understand all our potentials and then manifest and actualize all our potentials. So this shows these kind of two aspects that are there with regard to going for refuge. On the one hand, you need to have an understanding of your spiritual goal of wanting to be fulfilled and free, and how right now this is not happening so much. How your happiness right now is very temporary, very short-lived, and very fragile, can easily be replaced by some kind of suffering. And then there is actually suffering experience as well, which you don't want. So actually right now you are not living up to that what is actually at the center of your being, wanting to be happy and not to suffer. So this is a whole topic in itself. So there's a lot to be said about this. Is definitely one of the major points to meditate on in Buddhist analytical meditation. So we can just touch on this today, of course. But for example, one of the more coarser problems that we have is that what Venerable Tenda was talking about on that weekend when he was there, that we're all going to die. So the Buddha is saying that's not to be simply accepted. We have to think about, why is that? This is a horrible thing. All our relationships will be broken. All our situations, all our tools that we're normally relying on, for example, the different substances or situations that we take in order to have our kicks, our normal worldly happiness, or short-lived temporal happiness, all that we will lose completely. We will even lose our identity. We will no longer be a human man or woman of that and that country, with that and that kind of education and relationships and state and so forth. It will all be gone. So this is a horrible thing. Death is horrible. It's not just to kind of be accepted and then just like going a sheep to the slaughterhouse, just be accepted to be killed, but it's something to reflect on. And the Buddha encourages us to actually think about death. And that death is definitely a problem. If we want to be free of problems, we need to think about if it's possible to be free of death. So I'm just saying, in order to go for refuge, you need these two factors. One factor is to have a clear understanding that from a spiritual point of view, there is a lot to be desired about our life. Yeah, with regard to our spiritual potential and our spiritual quest of wanting to be happy and fulfilled and not to suffer, then here we definitely need to get out of the situation that we have right now. So we need support. And on the other hand, the second factor is that we understand that there is support and that the support is highly qualified. So we need to generate a trust in what is presented here as a support, as a refuge. So that what is presented as a refuge is traditionally called the 3 jewels of refuge. So this is referring to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So on a very, so that can be presented from many point of views. So on the one hand, of course, you could say Buddha, Dharma, Sangha is referring to the Buddha as the teacher of the Dharma being the text that you're reading from which you can understand what you need to practice, and then the Sangha, the community of practitioners. But normally it goes much further than that. Yeah. So in the end, the Buddha is a support in the way that a doctor is a support for physical things. So he's from a spiritual point of view presented as a doctor. He's the one who is first of all describing our present state of spiritual sickness, our present problems. He's very clear, can be very precisely present to us what's happening in our mind, in our lives. If you like, what's going wrong. He's also clearly saying that there's a potential of being healed from that. And he can describe how you can be healed. Yeah, so he can give us a practice, the Dharma. So similar to an actual doctor, if the doctor, when we have a sickness, is describing to us, so you have this and this kind of symptoms, this comes from this and this kind of misfunction of that and that organ and so forth. So therefore, you should do this kind of treatment, you should eat in this way, you should not eat that, you should eat that, you should drink more water, I don't know, whatever is the prescription. Just listening to that will not heal our sickness. And so the doctor itself is not healing us. What is healing us is actually the treatment itself. Yeah, so to follow that, what is prescribed with regard to dietary, with regard to exercise, maybe with regard to medicines to be taken, Yeah, so this medicine, let's say, or this treatment, is that what actually heals us or purifies us from our sicknesses and so forth. So that is likened to the Dharma. The Dharma that is prescribed, the practices that are given by the Buddha, that is the actual medicine. Yeah? So that what is healing us is the medicine, is the Dharma, and not the Buddha. So the actual protection, the actual support, the actual healing factor in the three jewels of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha is not the Buddha, it is the Dharma. That's very important. It is very important to understand that what is healing is not this being, is not the amazing qualities of the Buddha. He's not kind of look at you, put his hand on you, and then you're going to be spiritually awakened. Or he's not kind of I don't know, pray for you and then you will transform to something like this. It's not like this. He's teaching the Dharma. That's it. He's giving you the medicine. What is going to heal you is the practice. What is going to heal you is the Dharma. The Dharma is going to be the actual refuge. And then we talk about the Sangha, which was called here in the prayer the Supreme Assembly. So assembly means, of course, that people come together as a group, as a community. So the Sangha is traditionally always qualified as being the so-called Arya Sangha, which means a Sangha of practitioners who have actually attained a direct realization of reality. Yeah, so the Buddha says that at the very root of all our suffering and problems lies a misunderstanding about reality, about ourselves, who we are, how the world functions, and so forth. So with regard to the Sangha, we talk about people who have directly, not just intellectually, but directly an experience of how the world actually functions and how we actually exist. So that kind of perception is said to be actually the ultimate spiritual healing process, the ultimate spiritual medicine. So that's kind of these three, and the function of them again is like the Buddha is like a doctor in that he is describing our present state of spiritual limitation, and is describing that there is a healing possible. It describes our potential for nirvana and complete enlightenment, and he's prescribing what we need to do in order to get out of our present state and develop our mind to its highest potential. But the actual refuge is the actual medicine, therefore, is the Dharma itself, the practices. And so the practices will be states of mind. Actually, the practices is not some kind of outer thing again, but it's certain states of mind that we need to generate. And the Sangha is likened to the nurses in the hospital, such that the nurses are helping you with your treatment, to help you to take the medicine, helps you maybe with what you should eat, should not eat. Maybe they bring you the medicine and so forth. Yeah, exercises and so forth. They help you with all of that. So that's the function of the Sangha. This is why we go for refuge to the Sangha, so that they are a support for our practice, for our spiritual transformation process, actually, for our spirituality. So that's one way to describe the three jewels of refuge. But in the end, if you think about the analogy with the doctor, if the doctor describes your sickness and tells you what needs to be done, and he puts the medicine in front of you and maybe a sheet of paper which says like what kind of exercises you need to do, and then the nurses arrive and are preparing the medicine for you and are willing to do the exercises with you, all of this will not help you whatsoever if you don't take the medicine and if you don't do the exercise with the Sangha, with the nurses. So this is a very important point in this analogy. The analogy is this: going for refuge or protection or support from the Buddha does not mean that the Buddha or the Dharma or the Sangha is going to do it for you, because that's impossible. You are the only person that can purify your mind. You are the only person that can heal your spirit. Yeah, so the Buddha is prescribing the Dharma practice, and then there is the actual practice, and the Sangha will help you to do the practice. But you need to engage into the practice. And that will actually then transform things. That will dissolve problems, that will make potentials manifest and so forth through this practice. So what that means is that the actual refuge is yourself. It's going to be your practice of the Dharma in the correct way as prescribed, and with the support of the Buddha and the Sangha and so forth. That practice is going to diminish your problems. That practice is going to generate new approaches to situations, new ways of communication, new ways of feeling and so forth, new ways of dealing with problematic situations that will enable you to stay calm and peaceful whatever happens. Stay open and loving and generous whatever happens. Even if you are sick, even if the situation is that it's full of aggressive people. This is where the empowerment of the Buddha Dharma comes from, and this is where the support is. But the actual manifestation of that happiness and joy and fulfillment and empowerment is coming from you putting this Dharma into practice. You generating positive Dharma states of mind. That's going to be the actual refuge. And in the end, like in the long term, by practicing Buddha Dharma for many, many years and maybe even lives, you yourself will get into that state of that Arya Sangha that I was talking about before. You will be a practitioner that is so advanced that you will actually gain access to very high levels of Dharma minds, like such a mind that is actually understanding how you exist, how the world around you exists, and so forth. And you will actually have this kind of level of realization, which will be hugely transformative, manifest a lot of your potentials, purify a lot of limitations in your mind, and enable you to have a stable form of peace and happiness. And then on that basis, you can go even up to the state of liberation from all problems and complete purification into enlightenment. But all of these steps will depend on your engagement, in your putting the advice of the doctor and the medicine of the Dharma into practice. And in this way, you will be a refuge on yourself. So the Buddha has made this very clear. The Buddha himself made this very clear. He said, like, the Buddhas are not washing away negativities with water, and they're not taking away our limitations with their hands. But they're also not transferring their realizations into us. It's not that they kind of go into a ritual and then hold our hands, and then their calm and peace is then all of a sudden kind of entering into us. It's not like this. So the last line of this utterance of the Buddha is that, like, the Buddhas are only teaching the path. But in this way, they are an indispensable support and refuge. So maybe we can leave it at that for today. We have another session on refuge, and there's so much more to say about the whole thing. So my main point is this: in order to actually generate a mind of refuge, you need to have these two things. You need to understand how you need support in the spiritual realm. If you think that you can do it all by yourself, then there will be no possibility that you generate a mind of refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, because you already have it all, and you don't need support. So you need to have that level where you are understanding that you're lacking something and that you have a problem and you want to do something about it, and you need support in that, because it's going to be a huge project. It's not just a small problem that you want to fix, but it's going to be a long process, a real spiritual transformation. You want to have support for that. So that's the one thing, that you have a feeling that you need support. And on the other hand, you need to have this understanding that Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha have the capacity to support. So you need to reflect on their qualities, how the Buddha, for example, is free from all these problems, has attained that state that you're actually looking for, is therefore teaching a path, a practice from his own experience. And is insofar the supreme support that you could only dream of. There's a supreme help for your own spiritual quest, and therefore then you can generate some trust in the method that he's presenting in the Dharma, and also with regard to those who are advanced in the practice. that they can be a support to you. This way you would go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And this can be a mind that you can generate in the beginning of every session. Maybe we're going to do this from now on. We try to do this a little bit. I read this out this morning, this refuge verse this morning, I said in the beginning of our session here, when I was reading out this refuge verse. Yeah? So actually, this is what you would do in the beginning of any Buddhist practice, be it a teaching, being a ritual, being a meditation. You would go for refuge either by way of using such a standard prayer or refuge verse, as I used this in the first part when we did the meditation, or simply by going through your own words. And by the point is to generate this feeling that there is support and that you want to take this support, that there is a Buddha that is liberated from all problems, has generated all, manifested all potentials, has attained a state of lasting bliss and happiness, and that he's offering support by teaching the path that he followed successfully. So there is this support available, and then to generate a mind that you want to take this support. And on that basis, with that mind of refuge, then you go into the teaching, into the ritual, into the meditation, into the practice, into your day. Actually, you can take refuge in the morning as the first thing before you start into the day. Right. I think this was maybe a lot. I don't know. In case people have some questions, I would. We still have some minutes left. If people have some questions, we can answer the questions. Otherwise, we could just end with some dedication.
Actually, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to clarify more about what are the advantages of taking refuge and what are the disadvantages of not taking refuge.
All right. Yeah, I mean, this is actually a huge topic. Yeah, we could have a whole session on that. So maybe I can carry this into the next session and talk about this next time. Maybe I can just mention two advantages of two advantages of taking refuge. So one of the disadvantages is that you become a Buddhist. A Buddhist is somebody who's taking refuge in the three jewels. That's the definition of a Buddhist. It's not that a Buddhist is somebody who has statues at home, or it's not a Buddhist is somebody who likes the Buddha in general, or a Buddhist is somebody who has taken an initiation or something. A Buddhist is somebody who is taking refuge in the three jewels. So again, you can only take refuge in the three jewels if you understand that in the spiritual realm, a lot of your potential is just that, a potential. It has not manifested. And that there's a lot of limitations, and you're not living up to the meaning that comes out of yourself, that is wanting to be satisfied and continuously happy and not having to experience sufferings. So on that basis, taking refuge by understanding the qualities of a Buddha, having understood what a Buddha is, what his Dharma is, and what the Sangha is, then having this wish to go for support from that and take the support, try to put this as much as possible into practice in order to bring about a change of your situation, either for your own sake or for the sake of all sentient beings. On that basis, you become a Buddhist. Yeah, that's what is actually a Buddhist. So this actually opens a lot of discussion. So you could say if somebody is just born, let's say in Thailand or in Tibet or so, is he a Buddhist? Yeah, did this person actually understand that in the spiritual realm there's a lot to be done and needs support with that project of spirituality, and therefore is going to Buddha Dhamma Sangha for the good qualities that these have in the spiritual realm? So you might wonder if all the people that are referred to as Buddhists normally are actually Buddhists from the point of view of the Dharma. So anyway, that would actually make you a Buddhist. So to some extent, you could say that going for refuge is something like the Buddhist baptism. Yeah. So I guess if somebody would be, somehow we lost Marius in this. More people coming. Wonderful.
It's already cold outside.
It's very cold outside, right?
They came for the next class.
Okay, cool. Um, yeah, so you could say taking refuge is kind of the baptism. Like if you would think about somebody who is not just born into a Christian community and is baptized as a baby, but is maybe later on changing from one religion to another, changing to Christianity. Let's say he was a Hindu before, now he becomes a Christian. Then why would he do that? Why would he go through the ritual of baptism? Yeah, he would have thought well about all of this. He would have thought well about this other religion. He would have thought well about what God or Christ or whatever has to offer, and then wanting to be part of this, wanting to enter that kind of Christian dharma. So the same thing is going on here. You have to have quite something clear in your mind about your present state of affairs, your spiritual potential, and the qualities the Buddha Dharma Sangha have in order to generate that. So that actually makes you a Buddhist. Yeah? If you want to actually enter into Buddhism, then this is kind of the entrance gate for Buddhism. And the other thing has to do with a certain understanding about karma and ethical behavior. So the second advantage that comes to mind is that by having taken refuge, you have the basis for taking vows. Yeah, so without taking refuge, you cannot take any vows. You cannot become a monk. But there's also something called the lay vows. Yeah, so also these vows, which are a very, let's say, a very active, a very decided way of practicing ethical discipline, this kind of vows cannot be taken, cannot be generated in your continuum without going for refuge. So that would be two advantages. Actually, they talk about 8 advantages and so on. So as I said, there can be a lot said about that. Yeah.
And yes, thank you. Can you give us 2 discussion points for our next discussion group, please?
Yeah, I mean, why don't you take some of the maybe more provocative things that I said tonight? For example, do you think that you're spiritually sick?
Yeah.
Do you think you need a doctor? Because if you don't think you need a doctor, then the 3 Jews have nothing to offer to you. The Buddha seems to think that you need a doctor. What do you think about that? Do you think that the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha can fix your problems for you, or is it true that you can do this only by yourself? Do you think you can do it by yourself if you have the Dharma and the Buddha explaining to you what to do? Do you think you can fix your problems by yourself? Do you think you can liberate yourself? Can you think you can bring yourself to complete enlightenment? Because that's what I said. No, the actual refuge is actually your practice. If you don't take the medicine, it won't heal you. Yeah, so maybe this is things to think about. Yeah. Maybe the Buddha has some powers to somehow take you by the head and pull you out of samsara or something like this. And so how do we what kind of support are we looking for, and what's reasonable? Yeah, what makes sense? What kind of refuge can we actually receive? Yeah, something like that. And also, maybe, do you think that the Buddha was before, like us, spiritually sick, and maybe even worse than us? Is that possible?
And did he heal himself by himself without a refuge? This is a question. Did Buddha heal himself by himself?
Yeah, well, no. Yeah, I mean, normally we have an outlook on the Buddha as being like almost like holy, like the god of Buddhism or something like this. So the important thing is that Buddhism is saying he was not always like that. Yeah. So the text that we have just studied, the Brahmanavartika, is quoting from a verse of homage of praising the Buddha by Dignaga, where he starts, to the one who has become valid, to the one who cares for sentient beings, to the teacher, the Sugata, the protector. I go for refuge or I pay homage. So he starts by saying, like, to the one who became valid, central to all of Buddhism. The highest being has not always been the highest being. It has been like us. So that's central. So that's something to discuss to get this clear amongst you, that there was actually no difference between the Buddha in the past and us. He was as confused, as limited, as getting sick, as aging, as dying, as lost in samsara as we, and he became completely liberated. It's very important in order to get the inspiration of refuge also. Yeah, so maybe that's something that you can discuss amongst you.
Yes. Thank you.
Right?
Yes. Yes. Sounds
Good,
great.
then I would like to spend some minutes in just to concentrate again, to kind of meditation of dedication. Just to sit down again, check very quickly your body posture. Try to sit upright again. And then we bring to mind the Buddhist teaching that all our actions are over after they have been done, but they leave something in the mind. Yeah, so negative actions leave negative potential, and positive actions positive potential. And so this afternoon or this evening, we have 2 hour extent, 2 hour capacity, dealt with all kind of spiritual questions, our potential, purification with the Buddha and so forth. So all virtuous positive topics. And so while this listening is now over, it leaves positive imprints and positive energy in our mind. And that can only produce positive results in the future. So we want to work with these positive potentials by a dedication, because by way of dedication we can guide this energy to give certain positive results. So we dedicate the merit that we have, or the positive karma that we have accumulated this evening, so that we may understand all these topics that we have thought about and heard about this evening more and more, and can use them in our life. And we dedicated that we can also go further with that, can continue with exploring this kind of topics. And on that basis, be able to more and more free ourselves from all kinds of unconducive structures in our mind, negative structures, and instead develop our potential fully, so that we can be liberated, gain access to bliss and peace, and be highly beneficial to all beings around us. And then we can also dedicate this positive energy to the long life of all the spiritual practitioners that are with us here on this planet, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all kind of other great lamas that are spreading the Dharma and helping many people, many beings to improve their life and to actualize their potential. May they live long and teach us for a long time. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we do again in 2 weeks, or what's the schedule?
Yes, in 2 weeks.
Okay, wonderful. Then I hope you have a good time in the discussion group and give it all you have to explore it deeply. Do you have a library actually? Do you have some books on these topics in the center?
We have some, but very few.
Okay.
I can find something on the internet and print something for the people who would be interested about refuge. Maybe you can recommend me by email something.
And you know, sometimes you get surprising results if you just put in Dalai Lama Refuge, you know, and then you might find teachings in the internet on YouTube or whatever where he's talking about that. Anyway, have a nice week or 2 weeks rather, and have a nice discussion group, and we see each other or hear each other in 2 weeks.
All right.
All the best. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.